G'day guys, this is Tia, back with another Fallout 76 PTS video. Today we have a lot to cover with all of the endgame bosses within the PTS. Like all content covered here, this is all subject to minor tweaks and adjustments as it is the PTS and not the live game. But, effectively, what you see here in this video will be what we get in some form or another. The information within this video was provided by Mapex and the legends over at the Data Mining Discord. So big shout out to those legends for always hooking up the channel with the facts and the details for all of you guys. Thank you, appreciate it. Alright, so the endgame bosses that we spawn via nukes, that being the Scorchbeast Queen, Earl Williams and the Ultrasight Titan, all bosses except for the Storm Goliath as of right now, have all undergone and received some major balancing changes, buffs and nerfs and just tweaks in general. So let's get right into everything and dive into the nitty-gritty changes of each boss, and let's talk about how it affects you, the average player, and you, the veteran, min-max, damage-dealing player. Alright, firstly, let's touch base. The damage reduction effect on all bosses have been removed. This being the 70% damage reduction effect that the Queen had, and the 80% damage reduction effect that Earl and the Titan had. They are just straight up removed. And in its place, to make up for it, all of these bosses have had their health and resistances increased by the subsequent equivalent of damage mitigation that they lost. Basically, to make up for the fact that these bosses no longer reduce your damage by 70 or 80%, they now have a lot more health and basic damage, energy, fire, poison, and frost resistances to compensate. As you can see by this explanation from Mapex, with the math laid out straight there in front of you, the health being increased by just the right amount per boss, the end result is not a quicker or slower time to kill overall, as it does remain pretty much the same overall. However, as you all probably know, the reason for this change is VATS criticals. They did have a really powerful glitch built right into them where they would completely bypass this 70 to 80% damage mitigation effect that all bosses had, making it so that the only way to fight these bosses effectively was to become a crit optimized build. This change we see here today levels the playing field for all builds. It is not a massive straight up nerf or kill shot to criticals as some players are calling it. It is simply making criticals function properly and work more in line with how normal attacks are expected to work against these bosses. This change also has the amazing bonus result of actually being a little bit of a buff to non-VATS critical builds. Essentially overall, as Mapex explained, this change with mitigation removal and health increases will result in a slight boost in floating damage numbers and damage dealt for all non-critical builds. While it won't be anything major, and the time to kill will remain largely the same no matter what you're doing, playing a non-VATS crit build will feel more rewarding, and a whole lot better after this change goes through. While on the other hand, the already overpowered and still very effective meta of VATS critical builds will see a slight decrease in overall performance, but not by much. Criticals are still king and are still going to put the hurt out on the bosses with this change. It's just now, all builds can contribute and deal higher amounts of damage easier. Alright, with the general explanation done, let's show how each boss was changed. But, a bit of quick housekeeping first. All bosses do have a base health pool, but because they are legendary enemies, that means that their health gets increased by a factor of how many stars they have. In the boss's case, they are all 3 stars, so their health is increased accordingly. With that said, let's kick things off with the Queen. As you can see here, the Queen's old health used to be 32,676 at base value, which then got increased to 104,854 due to her being a 3-star legendary. Whereas now, her health has been buffed to 109,223 at base, which then in turn turns into a whopping 349,513 health, since she is a 3-star legendary creature. That's 349,513 hit points that the Queen now has. As for her resistances, they all used to be 300 for each damage type, that being ballistic, energy, fire, frost, poison, all of them, besides her radiation, which was 1000. This has now been increased to 1000 resistance for each damage type, being ballistic, energy, fire, frost, poison, all of them except for radiation, which got boosted to 3333. So with the Queen's 70% damage reduction removal, To compensate, this big beautiful beast has seen a significant increase to her health and damage resistance values, but overall, this should result in players dealing a net percent change in 233% more damage to the Queen. Dealing more damage than we normally would, plus more health to work through, it basically equals out to the same time to kill as you'd typically expect and see from them in the live game right now. So yeah, we deal more damage, but we have more health to work through. It's basically the same thing as if it still had that 70% damage reduction. You won't see too much of a change from this to the live game is what I'm trying to say, but it will feel a lot better if you're not a VATS critical user. For Earl Williams, the tankiest boss by a mile, he used to boast a health pool of 30,000 health, which was then increased to 96,000 due to him being a 3-star enemy. Now, it has been buffed to 150,000 health at base value, with it being boosted to a jaw-dropping 480,000 hit points due to him being legendary. While on the damage resistance side of things, he used to have 350 for each type and 450 for radiation. Earl is now rocking 1,750 resistance for each damage type, being ballistic, energy, frost, poison, fire, all of them, and he's now rocking 2,250 for radiation. As it says here, this will result in around a 400% damage net increase, but basically the higher health balances it out, making it feel about the same as I've been saying before. For the Ultrasight Titan, this ugly bastard used to have a base health pool of 31,000, which was increased to 99,200 due to the legendary status. Now it is sitting pretty with 103,333 health at base, which is then boosted to 330,667 health due to its legendary status. The resistance used to be 350 for everything except fire, which was slightly lower at 325, and radiation being 450. Now all of that has been boosted to 1,167 resistance for ballistic, frost, poison, and energy. Fire still being the Titan's weakness at slightly less, being 1,084 resistance, and radiation being boosted to 1,500. Again, all of this granting a net 233% in damage dealt, but due to the higher health, the time to kill will largely be unaffected. So yeah, those were the specific health and resistance value changes for each of these bosses. With the removal of the damage mitigation effect, they needed to be boosted in some way, and that has happened right here, as you can see, with the values that were on your screen just before. Now going on from there, it is important to note that all of these bosses, they are immune to radiation entirely, so them having a radiation resistance doesn't really mean anything for the moment. I'm not sure if they're going to make all of these bosses take radiation damage like the Goliath does, and they'll just tweak that so that they don't get insta-killed like the Goliath does. We'll see what happens there for radiation, but as of right now, they are immune to radiation, and I'm assuming at some point the Goliath will get a fix and it will no longer die instantly to radiation. It's also important to note that criticals are still bypassing all damage mitigation that is present in the game elsewhere, be that effects from players. If you do PvP, you can bypass all of the assassins and the sentinel and dodgy and all that with a simple critical strike. Or if you're fighting the Sheep Squatch, Ogwa, Blue Devil, or the Storm Goliaths, they all still have their damage negation effect up and working as of this video. But I'm sure these will probably see some changes in the future, not too dissimilar from the changes we see here with the Titan, Queen, and Earl. So yeah guys, that's all she wrote. The bosses of the game are seeing some balance tweaks. The damage mitigation effect has been removed, health and all resistances have been increased to compensate, and to summarize what this means for you as the player, bosses will remain just as tough as they were before, all non-critical damage numbers will be a tad higher, resulting in a slight damage boost, but because of the increase in health, the time to kill will remain largely the same. Critical shots do have a slight nerf, as now they have to contend with more resistance, instead of bypassing mitigation entirely like they were glitched to do before. And specifically, your time to kill on bosses remains largely the same if you're a non-crit user. However, you will notice a slight increase in time to kill if you are a critical user. Crit builds are still king and still do massive amounts of damage. However, the impressive solo records are most likely going to be a thing of the past. Sorry, Femos. So those are the changes, guys. Please let me know what you think about it all in the comments down below. Are you guys excited for more balancing in this game in the future? Would you recommend any further tweaks or changes? And if you're a critical user, how do you feel about this change? I've been Tia, and let's roll the outro. That's going to do it for me. A massive shout out to all of my channel members. You're all legends, and thank you for your continued support on the channel. If you like what I do here and you'd like to support me further, then consider becoming a member or check out my merch store. We've got a lot of great designs and benefits, so be sure to check that out in the description. And while you're down there, chuck me a follow on my other social medias and join my Discord. Subscribe if you're new and like the video if you've enjoyed. I've been Tia, and I'll catch us in the next one. Welcome to Valhalla.